Welcome back to Catholic Expression. I'm Christy, back with Father Greg for another exciting discussion. As always, our hope is to share some joy, laughter, and meaningful nuggets that bring us all closer to Christ. Are you ready, Father?
Ready with some new words for Catholics to use. They're a little bit complex or intense, but it's what I came up with for today. Stigmata.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the wounds of Christ on his hands that at least two saints have been given to signify or to remind people of the wounds that Christ suffered in his hands. I think St. Francis of Assisi, St. Pio, like Padre Pio in the 1900s, and that became such a thing of his fame and popularity that he covered his hands because of the blood that was shown to represent Christ's hands. Examination, as in examination of conscience. And when you, Christy, explain this to people, how would you explain what examination of conscience is?
To look introspectively at yourself over a course of period of time, whatever it is, on your actions.
Morally, yeah. Introspectively, wow. Did you just freely breathe like you breathe air? Just these big words that I have to really read closely on my phone. So I recommend doing it nightly. Obviously do it to prepare for confession. But it's recommended to do it before you go to bed every night. Look back in the day, see how you did with certain habits, virtues, vices, but also virtues. To look back on the good and the bad. Transubstantiation. That's like the biggest Catholic word there is.
Yep.
And that describes the change from bread and wine to the body and blood of Christ. Literally means the substance changes. It goes across from bread to flesh, for example. Conception. We're talking today about life, and life begins at conception. Story at the end of the episode here about the word Catholics should not use of contraception. And that's, so every once in a while throw out a word we should not use. Last time it was karma. Contraception is not only a word not to use, but a practice not to use. It's against the church. It's against life. Literally, contraception means against life. Immaculate, playing on conception. An immaculate conception. And that is for Catholics to know, that's describing primarily Mary's conception. December 8th, we celebrate the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. And the confusion Catholics have, they don't know it's Mary. It's even her mother's womb, St. Anne. They think it's Jesus. But it's related to Mary being conceived immaculately without sin from the moment of her conception. Charity. When you think of charity, what do you think most people think of with charity?
I think giving money or giving me items, yeah.
Literally, the church is saying it's gift of self. It came up in our Tuesday night talk, Tuesday series recently, where John Paul II really emphasized this, that love, charity, means gift of self. The more you give yourself, the more you live out your identity and dignity and being. That your being increases the more you give of yourself. So that's at the heart of it. That's what charity means, is to give. And we're going to talk about that today. Giving of yourself, your time, your effort, your love, and everything like that. So those are some new Catholic words, or at least words that we should know.
Yeah, that's great. And as always, a great lead-in to our topics today. So let's start with charity, since you left off there. So we had a big charity event in the parish. Well, actually, in conjunction with another Presbyterian church in the area, but a great charity event called Rise Against Hunger. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Rise Against Hunger is something we've been participating in in the past year with the genesis of the Outreach Center. That was one of the things that we aligned, as you said, with other churches in the area to be a part of Rise Against Hunger, which is assembling with the help of 100 volunteers plus meals for those who are hungry, I think mainly internationally.
Right.
So they assemble it, and the goal for the recent event was 20,000 meals, which is huge. And that goes around the world. And they have like 150 volunteers assembling these meals. Locally, we did it at the school here. And to get people involved. Awareness, of course, to raise about hunger in certain parts of the world that is so pronounced. And for us locally to do something here, I think, especially in Darnestown, we don't see the need, of physical hunger and homeless and so forth. So it's not really on our radar screen, but to have it kind of come here to us, the problem, and to be a part of the solution, and then have it sent out. I mean, that's such a huge number of 20,000 meals.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of charity.
Yeah. So I participated this past event
Mm-hmm.
for the first time. It's quite the operation. I know seeing the bags of food, they're so small. I mean, it's compact. It's rice and soybeans and different spices and dried vegetables. But understanding that that small package of food is multiple meals, multiple
Mm,
meals.
yeah.
So as families, we go to the grocery store and fill our cart with food for a week. And this could be food for a family for a week in a tiny little package.
That point is a huge one. It dawned on me when I went to Calcutta in the year 2000. We see what I would see, kids in the street would beg for just the morsels of food that
Mm-hmm.
you and I, or people in a first world country like ours, would just throw away.
Yeah.
And to be mindful of just the amount of food we waste and how far that can go in certain places around the world. And that's where it hits home, but also changes us to be mindful of the resources we use. I think it's that 20% of the world's population uses 80% of its resources.
Mm.
And that's just staggering. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to contribute to that.
Right.
So my own eating habits, and just take enough that I will actually eat and not to waste
Mm-hmm.
from meal to meal, and then actually help those who are going without. That's a huge part of our charity as Catholics. And you can see charity as writing a check to the organizations, and they do the work. And okay, that's fine, that's beautiful. But to get more involved, that's where you get this gift of self concept of that's it's so important to social justice. I think it's kind of coming out of yourself to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
So we think what you did on Monday is a holiday. You work so hard, and you finally get a day to just not work and rest and stay at home and do nothing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you come out of yourself to do it, and all the other volunteers, 150 volunteers. And that's a big part of our faith. We talk about social justice, not being social just like personality wise, but personally, to come out of yourself and to give of yourself to others.
Mm-hmm. It's a great way to connect it to our faith for sure. And we've talked about Catholic social teaching on this podcast before, but now with this practical example, how can we kind of connect the two?
So again, Catholic social teaching, kind of coming out of yourself to be addressing social justice or injustice. And we would see people hungry as being an injustice. We have Matthew 25, where Jesus says, what you do for those who are hungry and imprisoned and thirsty and naked and so forth, you do for Christ.
Mm.
And so there's a personal connection, not just a catechism thing or a doctrinal thing. That's certainly in place to address justice or injustice, but to recognize we do it for the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at the heart of Catholic social teaching, to see every person. We've talked recently about their dignity.
Mm-hmm.
Every person shares it, no matter where they live, no matter what their circumstances are. If they don't have the means to provide for themselves or to fight against injustice themselves, that's where we step in with our resources
Mm-hmm.
and our ability to stand up for them, people who can't stand up for themselves. That's a big part of it. So it's a general point that this is good to do, it's right to do, but it's also personal, like we're doing it for the Lord and each person's dignity.
Mm-hmm. So our social concerns group, who is also part of this event, they have a motto from Mother Teresa to find your personal Calcutta. And so you talking about that reminds me, because she saw Christ and all the people that she served. And that was what kind of really motivated her, is seeing Christ. And that's a way to think about, how do we find our own personal Calcutta in our lives here?
That's really good. I didn't know that was their theme, and I love it because I've been there and I have a deep connection with Missionaries of Charity, which is Mother Teresa's order. But as you said, she connected with Christ and the poor. She had lost a connection with him in prayer for many years, and she found him and recognized him and related to him and the poor. And that might be another gift for people who are struggling in their faith to know the Lord, to see the Lord, to hear him, to have that Mother Teresa experience, to be another Mother Teresa, where this is a spiritual gift or a spiritual experience for you to know him in serving the poor.
Mm-hmm. So we have another big event that kind of aligns with our values and
Very much.
morals and Catholic social teaching that's coming up for our whole nation, actually. It's the March for Life.
Mm.
So can you explain a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, so many things that we've said already to recognize the dignity of every person. And if we believe, and I think science is confirming over the decades recently, that life begins at conception.
Mm-hmm.
I remember on the college campus doing ministry and so forth, and so many of the students who looked into the science and technology of, the ultrasound and all the science and so forth that's involved in life in the womb, they could see life. They could see movement and see the baby in the womb. They became more aware and thus more active and pro-life.
Right.
So I think science is something, and something also the church has grown its understanding of life beginning at conception, that is a person from that moment of conception. Just like you and I are persons who have dignity
Mm-hmm.
and a right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And so the march kind of began when it did begin after the Supreme Court decision of Roe versus Wade of January 22nd, 1973.
Wow.
When that was ruled on by the justices that states could make abortion legal if they chose. It's up to the states to decide one way or the other. And so the year after that, on that anniversary, ever since 1973, the march has been held as a peaceful protest to that decision, which we believe is unjust.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, again, standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. The unborn babies have no voice, so we are their voice, marching. So all those years before it was overturned recently, it was primarily to peacefully protest that unjust decision.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, if you think of God creating each one of us specifically for purpose as one of his children, the first time you see an ultrasound, you have to recognize that is life inside the womb. It's truly incredible and one of his children.
And then accompanying that, references in Scripture to life in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
I've called you from the womb. We had that in the reading this past Sunday, that God calls us and forms us in the womb to be his servant, to be a light to the nations. It's such a politically charged phrase or terminology. Like in the words I use, people might have that initial controversial reaction because of how politically charged some words are. But these are facts. That God begins to form us in the womb, and we see the physical movement with brain waves and heartbeat from a very early on in the womb, and saying, yes, there's no difference. We had a youth group the other night. We had a discussion, and somebody brought up what a comedian said, that if you begin to make a pizza and you put it in the oven and someone pulls it out of the oven and throws it across the room, you're going to say, you just threw my pizza.
Yeah.
You're not going to say, those are the things that could have been a pizza.
Yeah.
It's like, it was a pizza. And it was a great point that we believe that analogy works, that life starts in the oven, so to speak, as life, as human life, and as a person. So the justices made the distinction between a person and a human being. A human being has rights, but a person doesn't. And they determined that a baby in the womb is not a person because it doesn't, breathe on its own, and it's not viable in that sense. And so that's the objection we have, that just because a baby can't take care of his or herself, like out of the womb, they're not totally viable. So in the womb, it's the same thing. That's been the point of contention for so long. Viability is a key word in all of it, but also just when does life begin? And over the years, Christi, since I've been really involved in this since the early 90s, you see a lot of changes. We've talked before about how political parties have changed their positions. You see how certain movements will shift and change and kind of speak to the people of the day, whereas the church it's about truth.
Right.
And we don't really have catchwords or buzzwords or slogans and so forth. It's just saying these are truths that, for example, the baby in the womb is a person with as many rights as anyone. The church herself calls it the preeminent issue, especially when we get into elections,
Mm-hmm.
about if they are injustices against life. And the math is staggering since 1973.
Mm.
I haven't seen the latest numbers, but it's over 60 million babies have been aborted.
Oh, wow.
And when you first learn about it, like I did in college, it's like the biggest social injustice of our time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we march, is to be a part of it. I like to think that I would have marched in the 1960s
Mm-hmm.
in the social injustice with civil rights and segregation and all those things. So it's the sense of justice first and foremost, and the shifting. I remember when I first went in the 90s, the language from the abortion industry or politicians was to make abortion safe, rare, and legal. Well, I just said they're not rare. When you're
Yeah.
going to, at the time, they also were making abortion on demand more available to reduce restrictions, so that for the states that had it, the federal government was saying, we'll remove all these restrictions to make it more accessible. But at the same time, they're saying it should be rare. And you just kind of see through all that double talk. And now it's promoted to the point where at a national convention for one of the political parties, there was abortions right outside the arena.
Oh, gross.
So to see that evolution, but just the changing of the tides for whatever's going to sell today to
Mm-hmm.
people, and politically, but also with business, and you see it's a big business. So you kind of process all this, and at the heart of it, as moral agents of justice, social justice, we've been there the whole time, watching all these twists and turns of the other side. There've been, successes, of course, in terms of lives saved, and that's a point. People who have realized the error of their ways. They did an examination of conscience about their abortion from 20 years ago or however long, and they march for healing. That's
Mm-hmm.
another part of the reason why we march, is to be pro-life, which means to advocate for life, to make steps for life, and to be proactive for life. And a lot of the women at the march now have had abortions,
Mm-hmm.
and you might see signs saying, "I regret my abortion," and now they are, with every step for life, it's healing for them and their hearts, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest wound. If I've said before that the strongest bond on earth is between a mother and her child from the 9 months in the womb, then it's the biggest pain if you end that bond intentionally. If you
Mm-hmm.
end the baby's life, the wound to the mother is so deep and profound. The church offers incredible healing post-abortion to women than more than any other private institution in the world. So as much as we fight for life and we love the baby, we also love the mother and the father. And if they're wounded by abortion, we're there to help them
Mm-hmm.
with different resources in the church. That's something I've always preached when I preach on the issue, is saying, yes, we're opposed to the injustice and the evil act of abortion, but we're also there to pick you up if that's the choice you made. And a lot of those women have been picked up by the church, and they march for their own healing,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to being a witness to life.
Yeah. So I know personally the bond between a mother and a child is really deep, but I don't want to underscore the pain and healing that is needed for men as well.
Yeah.
One of our parishioners here, who's also a podcast listener, sent me a video. And gosh, it was so, so powerful, of a man who was needing and experiencing that healing himself from contributing to and actually hoping that his then teenage girlfriend, much earlier in life, had an abortion, drove her to the clinic, all of that, went through just deep pain for years and carried that burden with him for years, not really even realizing the burden it was having on him. And now he speaks out about it, and he's a very active speaker on the topic, but just an incredibly powerful and moving story of just the impacts that has on men as well as women.
Yeah, it's often buried within consciences
Mm-hmm.
because it's so horrific for people to address. And just in my conversations with people from the other side, you see when the vitriol comes out, my experience means they've been a part of this, either driving people to, abortion facility or having it directly themselves. And when a conversation like this happens, it's tough. It's very sticky because it's so personal and difficult. But that's where the Lord goes to heal wounds. I mean, look at the people, the women in the gospel, the woman with the well with her marriages, the sinful woman and Mary Magdalene. I mean, even in the thief on the cross next to him, just freeing people from the wounds of sin. And that's the business of the church. We're out on the front lines. We try to speak against injustice like Christ, but also there for people who committed it and are open for forgiveness and change of heart. We're there to help promote it. And so many of us, if we didn't participate in direct evils, but we did other evils, we recognize we're sinners too.
Right.
And we're walking that fine line between standing up for what's right and not being self-righteous. That's a tough line to walk, but it's tempering justice with mercy always. And you see it really is an act of both to march and to represent. Then you get into the bigger picture after all the kind of darkness of the situation. There's such life, there's such vibrancy and youthfulness, literally youthfulness at the March for Life. So when I first started going, it used to be on the ellipse, which is where the White House is, from the White House all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
And you'd see that whole mile-long stretch, however long it is, 2 miles, covered with people, wall-to-wall people. And like, gosh, there's like 500,000 people here.
Wow.
And then the Park Service was like, 10,000 people worth of March for Life.
Wow.
Just totally downplaying the national representation. And you're there with mainly Catholics, young Catholics, families, churches from all over the country. Since the march began, other cities have had their own March for Life if they can't come from California and so forth. But the takeaway is, yes, we are here for the unfortunate, injustice, but also to celebrate life and to rally with each other for babies, for mothers, for fathers, for life in general. And it becomes like a big celebration. It's awesome.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody recently, and I think a lot of Catholics feel this way, that they don't want to mix politics with their faith. And I really like how earlier you explained that really this is about the truth. And that's what we focus on, right? Scripture and the truth. It was here long before politics ever were. So it's not about us interjecting politics into our faith. It's really the opposite. Politics have entered into our faith. Being able to go there and celebrate life and share our faith with others is truly beautiful in what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, and you wonder if the same person would have the objection, if that's what he or she was raising, for the civil rights videos in the 60s. Because there are pictures of priests and bishops at the front lines of the civil rights march and movements. Would people have the same objection, looking back on it, saying, why does the church get involved in that? Well, it's obvious that was a huge civil rights injustice, huge social injustice. So this is no different.
Right.
In fact, this is what many people believe is murder.
Right.
That all those babies died, 60 million plus. You do the stats, again, it's staggering. That's more than all Americans died at war combined. All the wars we've ever participated in, the number of casualties, as tragic as they are, far less combined than all babies who died in our country from abortion since 1973.
Wow.
It's sad. Yeah, it's staggering. And that's why we are taking the risk of being perceived as political, getting involved in the public square. We do it with elections. We do, and just, again, about moral issues. This is, we cannot and we do not promote either a party or a candidate or anything like that. But on issues, we have every right. We are the moral authority of the world, the church is. We have every right and responsibility to address morality and immorality in our world, even if it's public. Sometimes, especially when it's public, it's just the disagreement I think people have. Looking back on the civil rights movement, people are not going to object to it because they see it as evil to segregate people because of their race or their skin color. obviously that's evil. This is a different situation because it involves personal choices and lifestyle. Mother Teresa said it's the greatest poverty to kill a child so that you may live as you wish. 95% plus of abortions are for birth control.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's different with this, because it's getting into people's personal lives.
Right.
And they're like, who are you to tell me how to live? And don't tell me that I have to do this or I can't do that. That's why it's so emotionally charged. All these decades,
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're up against. And it has been, even with contraception, that's a taboo for people to hear about, for the church to get into.
Right.
That's not political, that's moral. But who are you, church, to tell me? And like literally since the 1960s, the phrase has been, keep the church out of my bedroom, from like
Wow.
devout Catholic married couples.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the perception is, and why it's so vitriolic at times, because it's kind of coming into people's wheelhouses about how they live. And it's just, they want this, but they don't want that. They want sex, but they don't want a baby.
Right.
And that's where we are stepping on their toes. And it's not just this objective general issue like segregation. This is, which obviously involved people's lives, but it was much more, I think, it's now universally accepted that that was wrong, and definitely step in. But the same people looking at these issues we're talking about here might not be so inclined. And of course, the other thing, the main issue is, when does life begin?
Mm-hmm.
If you really believe life begins at conception, then everything we're saying today is like, oh my gosh, I have to defend life.
Right.
But so many people have moved the goalposts of this, I think, to justify their position. There's really not the science behind it, and technology, and it's not the truth. Just it's basic biology that kids learn. They should be learning
Mm-hmm.
that when an egg is fertilized, fertilization is the beginning of that life.
Right.
And that's what we're standing up for.
Right. So strides have been made in this area in the United States. How have things changed over the course of the last few years?
So now we go, and Roe versus Wade has been overturned. We still go because it's such a thing to go and to celebrate life. So it's not so much a protest as it is a celebration. And that's why my language, my speaking about it from the pulpit in recent years is different from before.
Mm-hmm.
So many things that we're talking about today, I would mention as a way, to fight the injustice. Now it's obviously it's promoting the justice of protecting life. And because the recent decision to overturn Roe versus Wade takes it from the federal to the state levels, well, now a lot of people are saying we need to then focus on our March for Life in Annapolis
Mm-hmm.
or wherever our state is. That now it's shifted. We still need to defend life and fight for justice. But I think the national march is really more of a rejoicing
Mm-hmm.
and joyful and peaceful, happy day.
Right. And if you don't celebrate those victories, history has a tendency to repeat itself. So it always keeps it too at the forefront, I think, of our minds that this did happen. It was a thing, and it's not now. Let's not repeat it. Kind of coming full circle and looking at both of these events, what do they teach us about the dignity of every life?
Well, I think we touched on it a little bit already, a pretty good bit actually. That when we're making, you made meals for people you'll never meet,
Mm-hmm.
but you believe inherently that whoever receives the meal or meals, as you described, even a little bit of food goes a long, long way where you're sending it, that is going to honor the person who receives it, but also it honors Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is with the March for Life, which, by the way, has been described as the only march that is for other people. Normally, people march for themselves, their own rights, as people, as workers,
Mm-hmm.
different groups. But the March for Life is literally for people like in the womb, mothers, fathers that we don't know, we will never meet. But just knowing that shared dignity, this is a great two events of shared human dignity, recognizing that the recipient of our action is to honor their dignity
Mm-hmm.
because they're human beings. And that's, to me, it's really, it's enjoyable. It's fascinating. It's powerful. It's inspiring. When we get involved in different social justice issues and actions and movements, to see the body of Christ as the church in all its forms and all its weaknesses or illnesses or suffering. When Jesus, again in Matthew 25, it's all these different situations. People are hungry, they're thirsty, they're naked, they're sick, they're imprisoned. And as Catholics, we can get involved in all of them.
Mm-hmm.
In every parish, there's going to be that outreach. Like, we literally have the outreach center that addresses hunger and thirst. And we're trying to get into imprisonment with people who are sick. So if people want to get involved, they're hearing this or just know in general, they're feeling the call to get involved to serve the dignity of other persons in our area and around the world. Then I think it's just to look into talking to Megan, reaching to the outreach center. We have LLP for Life. There's different things they can do at the local level. But even though we don't see it around in Darnestown as much, it's pretty kind of sterilized here from a lot of this. We also know, and we've talked before with the Outreach Center, that there's as much, if not more, personal suffering, maybe not physical suffering, or there's personal poverty, spiritual poverty, and so forth in our area that you and I spend a lot of time addressing as well. So that's for the dignity of every person too. The spreading the gospel and the healing that we offer spiritually is also, in a way, addressing, personal wounds that people have, or building up their dignity as persons as well. So there's so much to do. We can talk all day. This has been kind of a longer episode than we probably figured, but it's because there's so much to this, so many layers to it.
Right.
It's on a basic human level. Like, these are babies, to the point of you honor Christ when you send meals to people around the world.
Right. And even in our local area, we have a tremendous social concerns group that collects food once a month. Yeah, it really is. And I think we would be remiss in not mentioning that I think we're both going to the March for Life this year. So we do have a bus of people going. If anyone's interested in joining us, it's going to be a really great day.
Yeah, it's 2 days away. We got a biggest group of cadets from West Point that we've ever had here. They spend the night and they sleep on the floor. As so many young people, basically all the churches in our area are full of young people who are pilgrims.
Yeah.
Making the pilgrimage to the March for Life, sleeping on floors, going without showers. And that's part of the experience. And that's, again, a growing group from West Point. They love doing it all. They love coming to DC. They love coming to our church. People here love having them. It's a big love fest, all of it.
Totally. So beautiful.
So here's a surprise. When I was the chaplain at GW, Ash Wednesday masses were full, as you can imagine. So that was the day to get out to the crowds with certain things. And one of the things that I did, we would pray regularly at our student masses for this, but we had a petition at the Ash Wednesday masses for respect for life. And at the one of the masses, again, there's like wall-to-wall people, and want to make sure that the message is going out properly to reach hearts. And it was awesome because we had priests come in for confessions during Mass, and it was the best. Well, one of the lectors gets up to do the petitions, and she was one of our best, most solid students. She did not do this intentionally at all. She said, "And for respect for life at all stages, from contraception to death."
Oh, no.
And there's like 700 people looking at me, and I'm like totally white as a ghost. I'm like, this is one of the words you're not supposed to say or, use. And she just totally said, and I don't think she realized it.
Yeah.
Later on, she was like horrified.
Oh, poor thing.
Contraception, meant to be from conception to death. And she said contraception. But we were kind of laughing about it. It was unintended use of the word, but it was more comical than anything. But gets in people's minds of that language that they may not hear the word conception. So that's quite a surprise during Mass to hear that.
Yeah. How did you play it off? Make a joke of it? No.
I just remember being surprised, but just move on. It's like if somebody mispronounces a word, a name in the readings, the lector, just keep going. Some people correct it, but I think you can bring too much attention to it and then like be so horrified and let's just move on.
Gotcha. Well, thank you as always, Father, and thank you all for joining us for this episode of Catholic Expression. We hope today's conversation inspired you, and as always, we would love to hear your thoughts. Your support means everything. It helps us to reach more people and continue spreading God's love. Until next time.
May my God bless you, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Amen.